Hey everyone, it's Michele B with In the Hive with Michele B, and I am so happy to be here today. I am a broker with Real Broker LLC and the founder of #SoBoca Lifestyle. And today my guest is Amanda Dahl of Amanda Dahl Consulting. I'm so excited to have her. She is a business planning consultant extraordinaire, amongst other things. She's a coach and just totally understands the real estate business. And she's going to give us 5 tips today on why you need to start business planning now. And just so you know, you're probably already behind the 8 ball for 2022. So welcome, Amanda, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here on SoBoca. We talk about it so much. Like you said, my name is Amanda Dahl. I'm in Tampa Bay, Florida. That's my home base. And I own a coaching and consulting company for real estate business owners, because that's what we are, right? So whether you're a single agent who's just getting into the business, or you're someone that has an established business and many team members, I coach to that. And it's something that I'm extremely passionate about, because we don't talk about the business planning side or, the financial piece to building out a plan to really have a scalable business. We don't talk about that often. And yet we have to have that in order to have a successful business. So I will say, though, that we're not quite behind the 8 ball yet. So we do business planning in October. So if you're listening to this message, you still got a couple days. So not quite behind the 8 ball on that. And yet the reason that we say that, right, business planning in October, is because we know there's a 90-day ramp up. And when we look at from the time a lead enters our orbit to the time we actually get to the closing table and a paycheck, there's usually about 90 days there. So we know we need that ramp up. So if we're planning in October, we've got 3 months to get that momentum going, build that pipeline, so that January 1, we're out the gate running. So I love that you're talking about this topic, because not a lot of people do. And yet, we can talk about 5 simple steps. I love it.
Yeah. So one question I have for you is, why do you think agents don't business plan? Because I hear that a lot.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'll tell you, I truly believe it's because they don't know what they don't know. I mean, when you look at the average person getting into real estate, there's not a lot of them that have come from a background where they own their own business. Usually it's corporate America, or they were an employee for somebody else. And so while they served a purpose in that business, they weren't in charge of maybe the financial pieces and the hiring piece and all those things that go into the lead generation pieces, all those pieces that go into running a business. And so they jump in and they're just like, they read all the magazines and they watch HGTV. They can wake up at 11 and they can go meet someone who has $1 million listing and listed, and then they're just going to have a wonderful life, right? And that's not how it works. Right. Anyone who has a successful real estate business will tell you that they work 9 to 5 on good days, right? Sometimes it's 12-hour, 14-hour days, because we have a business to run. So I think that's why, because they just don't know what they don't know.
So let's start with your first tip. What would you tell agents right now who want to start doing a business plan?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that I would say is you have to know where you want to go. And you don't have to get micro in the details, yet you have to know. And so when I'm having this conversation with somebody who's maybe newer into real estate, or maybe even someone who has a business but has just never really done like goal planning, my question is always this. So Michele, if you and I are sitting at a table 12 months from now, and we are just celebrating what a massive success it's been for you in real estate in the last 12 months, what things would come up? And usually when I ask that question, it sparks someone to say, oh man, I would love to look at my 1099 at the end of the year, and I would love for it to say 150,000 or 200,000. So usually it's around money. Or I want to make 150,000 or 200,000. And here's why, because if I make 250, I can give back 50 or something. Right. So we have to know what is it that we want to accomplish in the next 12 months. And so sometimes I will talk to people and they know they've got established businesses and they know that they want to be in like a super growth phase for next year. So maybe it's not necessarily the money, because they know they'll be investing some of it back into the business, but it's more about the people or the systems that are going to get them to that. So what needs to happen is I need to have an assistant hired, or I need to have an ISA hired. And because of that, I know that we're going to double our units and it's going to get us to X amount of dollars. So you have the number one is know where you're going, know what it is that you want to accomplish in the next 12 months.
Perfect. What is number 2 in this list?
Yeah. So number two is now getting really clear on the amount of time that we have to work with. Because a lot of people don't factor that in. They just say, oh, I have the next 12 months. And realistically speaking, that's not the case. I had a mentor, Gary Keller, someone who's mentored me for the last 6.5 years, because that's the brokerage that I'm with.
Right.
And I get to read his books and I get to go to our conferences and all of that. And so he constantly talks about when he's filling out his calendar for the next 12 months in business planning, the first thing that goes on his calendar is his vacation and family time, relationship time. And that's a permanent marker. He does not erase that. Then the second thing that goes on his calendar are his trainings and his conferences and his speaking engagements, because he knows he's going to have educational things. He knows he's going to have coaches retreats or high level masterminds. And then he knows he's going to have conferences and things he needs to speak about. So those are things he needs to speak at. So those are going to go on his calendar secondly. And then now we have a true clear picture of how many days in the year he has left to actually work. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important for you to get clarity on that. So what's the time frame? If you're someone that is constantly doing, 2 or 3 family vacations a year and you go a week at a time, or there's those 2 or 3 big conferences that you attend and they're a week at a time, or you have those women's retreats, or you have those high level mastermind retreats, or whatever it is, what are those things? And we're going to subtract that from the 12 months. And in addition to that, then like if you're someone who it's like, I don't work on Sunday, not going to happen. Or maybe I don't work on Saturday because that's Johnny's soccer game and whatever, and I'm not missing that. So now we can start to subtract those from the equation. So we have a true picture of not 52 weeks that we have to work with, but maybe it's 48 or 47, right?
I love that. And it's interesting because years ago when I worked for a Fortune 500 company, Warner Lambert, we got substantial vacation time. And when you really started to back out vacation time, legal holidays, okay, and sick days, it ended up adding up to almost 2 months out of the year that you actually weren't really working. So then you had to back out Saturdays and Sundays. And so this was your business days that were available to you to actually make your numbers quarterly, because we were dealing with consumer health products. So we had quarterly goals that we had to hit in order to bonus out and things like that. So this is exactly what you're saying here is like, look, we don't have a full year of work. We have to back out these other things and then be realistic about, okay, how many hours a day do I want to work those days that are left?
Well, and so then we dial that down. So once we realize how many weeks we have, and this comes a little bit later on in the process when we're actually taking what our goal numbers are and we're rolling them into what our weekly activities are. But like we even get even more granular. And what I mean by that is like, I was actually talking to someone today in a Clubhouse room and she's like, I'm married, I have 2 kids, but I'm like a single mom because my husband is always away on business, or I don't know if he was in the military.
Right.
And she's like, so I have all those responsibilities. So when we dial down into the business planning piece and we get ready to put that stuff on your calendar, we have to know when her husband's home, she has 8-hour days, but when he's not home, she has 6-hour days because she's got to get the kids to school and she's got to cook dinner and she's got to do all that. And so now she knows she only has 6 hours in a day versus everyone else who might have 8 hours in a day. And it's really important to identify that stuff, because what happens is when we don't consider down to the hours in the day, we set ourselves up not to succeed. And then what happens in real estate, right? We say, oh, it didn't work, I got to go get a real job. But really, did we give ourselves the right tools, the right plan, and did we estimate appropriately and set goals that are actually realistic and achievable? All of this stuff factors in. So yeah.
That's amazing. I love this thought process. So you guys make sure that you're taking notes, and that if you have any questions, you can DM both of us or Amanda with any questions once we're done with this particular recording and interview. So what's number 3?
Yeah. So number 3 is tracking systems. Okay. Tracking systems for progress and data. And everybody goes like, it's so funny when I teach this stuff in real life, you can hear all the energy like run out of the room. Because when you start talking about data and systems, everyone's head wants to spin. Right. And it's so vital and important. And here's why, because once we get these goals in place, and now we've got a plan and we know what timeline we're working with, and now we're ready to get into action. How do we know if it's working? And the worst feeling in the world is to pick your head up and it's June and you realize you are nowhere near meeting your goal and you had no idea. I mean, that's got to be like a sunken feeling. And here's the thing. This is probably one of the most important things that I learned in coaching and just being in a career and just business and just life in general. And that's, we as individuals, we judge ourselves on our intentions and we judge other people on their actions. And what if the roles were reversed? Because when we don't plan accordingly, and then we put systems in place to actually track this information and collect data for us, we just think we know what it is, but we don't really have any proof. And yet, if we were to track it every single day and look at the data, what we would find is a lot of the times we're judging ourselves, or we're acting on our intentions, and when we look at accountability, we're looking at our intentions and not our actual actions. Because I mean, think about just a day in the life of someone who's got a really busy business. You wake up and you got kids, right? You wake up, you got to get your kids ready, then you get them out the door, then you got to get to the office, or you got to get to your home office. You got to start making calls and answering emails. And your intention was to call 20 people. That's it. It was 20 people. You had it in your head, you were going to do it. And you get sidetracked. And by the end of the day, you've only called 6. And you go, oh my gosh, I know I didn't make my 20, but you know what? My intention was so great. It's fine. I'll put them on the list for tomorrow. And we let ourselves off the hook. And the reality is, if we set our goals based on the fact that you've got to make 20 contacts a day and you only made 6, that's 14. You're behind the 8 ball now that you have to make up for. You don't get to erase those. So you've got to replace them somewhere else in your schedule. But if we don't know those numbers and we're not actually tracking those numbers, we don't realize how many days that happens in a row. And that's exactly why we get behind and we look up in June and we have no idea why we're not meeting goal and we don't even know what we've. So tracking systems are so important. And like some of the systems, just to give you guys like an example, like first and foremost, like tracking lead generation, right? So the lead comes into your system, doesn't matter what business you're in, but the lead comes into your system and then you reach out to make contact. When you made contact, like, did you mark that? Because when we're putting money into leads, or, you know, maybe you're somebody who actually just has referral business and it comes from your database, but still, when you get the name and number of someone that's a referral from your database, like, are we actually tracking that? A lead came in and then what happened? Did we make contact? Did we attempt to make contact and we couldn't? Then when we made contact, were we able to set an appointment? Then when we make an appointment, did we get an actual agreement signed? Then when we get an actual agreement signed, did we actually get it under contract? And then did it actually close? The reason that we track in all those areas is because we need to know how many leads do we need to talk to in order to reach that goal that we talked about, that we set for 2022? Well, if we're tracking these numbers along the way, we're going to know I know I need to talk to 500. I need to have 500 leads come into my system next year. Because if I'm converting to appointment at this ratio, and then I'm converting to agreement signed at this ratio, and I'm converting to under contract and convert, now I know my conversion rates. And I know that if I have 500 leads in front of me, the data shows me that I will reach that goal. But we too often don't know those numbers, and we don't know them because we're not tracking them. So if you don't take anything else from this call, tomorrow, start tracking your numbers. Every time you make a phone call and it's actually a contact, track that. And then from the contact, was I able to get it to an appointment? And when you track those over the weeks and the months, you'll start to find out what your conversion rates are. And so not only does that help with the data and it helps you set your goals better, it also causes you to ask questions in your business. Because if you're getting all these leads that are coming in, but you're not converting to, like, you can't even make contact with them, I would ask, what's the quality of the lead? Or am I calling them at the wrong time? Am I reaching out at the wrong time? But if I'm getting a bunch of leads and I'm actually making contact and I'm not setting enough appointments, again, it causes me to ask questions. Am I qualifying them properly? Were they really a lead? Were they not a lead? Were they hot right now? Maybe they needed 6 months. This data allows you to ask questions in your business.
So this leads back to also agents that say, I can't find a CRM that works for me. And the bottom line is you have to work that CRM. So that's a great location for you all to be tracking your leads and crunching the data so that you know where these leads and people are in the pipeline for down the road, as well as understanding, do you amp it up? Do you amp it down? How consistent can you commit to? Which is what we talk about with social media. It's like, you don't need to post every day on Instagram, the grid. But if you could commit to 2 a week, can you consistently do that? Can you consistently do 5 stories a day? Can you do 1 reel a week? It's the same thing with what you're saying. It's like, okay, let's crunch these numbers. Here's what I'm committing myself to so that I can make XYZ for the next year. So I think that's brilliant.
Someone's listening to this and they say, like, Amanda, how would I do that? Like, you don't even need a robust CRM. Here's
Right.
how you do it. And this is how I teach my clients. If you've never tracked numbers before, here's what you do. I want you to, and Google's free. I love it. So if you have a Google-based business, you can literally create a Google form. And you create a Google form with like 6 categories. The first category is what's today's date. The second one is what's my name. And the only reason you put what's my name, especially if you're a team that only has you, is because if you're going to scale later on, you're going to have more names for this sheet. But whose name is it? Whose sheet is it? Then the next is going to be how many listing contact, or how many contacts did I make? How many listing appointments did I set? How many buyer appointments did I set? How many listings did I take? How many buyers did I take? How many under contract? How many closings? How many reviews? And how many referrals? You're going to just create, it's easy. Boom, boom, boom. It'll take you 5 minutes. If you don't know how to do it, watch a YouTube tutorial on how to create a Google sheet. It's free.
Yeah.
Then what you're going to do is once you create that sheet, you're going to copy that link. And then I want you to go to your calendar, and Monday through Friday, I want you to create a reoccurring event. And I want you to do it. It's the last thing you do before you pack up for the day. And it's just a 5-minute time block. And it literally says, remember to log your lead gen. And when you create that calendar invite, in the body of it, I want you to take the link from that Google form, and I want you to stick it in there. So every day when your time block goes off for whatever time, if it's at 4 o'clock, if it's at 5 o'clock, whatever time that is, you click on it. And when it opens up, you click the link, it takes you to the form. You fill out the 5 or 6 questions and you submit it. That's the easiest free way to start tracking your data. And then on the back end, it collects in a Google spreadsheet, so that over the course of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you can start to see that build up. And now you're tracking all those numbers.
Love it, love it, love it. All right. So let's roll into tip number 4.
4. So 4 I put down, and I feel like this is the most important of anything that we ever do. And that's tie accountability to it. Because if we don't have accountability, we know, again, we're going to judge ourselves on our intentions. And what do I mean by accountability? I'm so glad that now, if you've taken that tip and you're recording your numbers, you're recording them. But like, when are you holding yourself accountable to actually look at them in the data? Right. And so it does. And if you're someone who has team members or agents working with you, like, when are you doing weekly accountabilities with them so that you can review their numbers with them? Because this could absolutely be a skills issue. It could be a training issue. It could be a lack of tools or systems issue. Because we know when we fail at something, it's one of 2 things. Either the system fails the person or the person fails the system. And when we tie accountability to things that we do in our business at a high level, we can very easily determine whether it was the system or the who issue. And so what do I mean by accountability? You should be having weekly meetings, even if they're with yourself. If you're someone who's a single agent and you have a coach, you should be doing this weekly with your coach and looking at those numbers. If you don't have a coach just by yourself, you need to have a time block that every single week you go back and look at those numbers and say, okay, I know my goal this week was to make 50 contacts. Did I actually do that? And of those 50 contacts, I was supposed to set 5 appointments. Did I actually do that? And so on and so forth. So tie accountability to it. I love when you have like another person holding you accountable versus you holding yourself accountable, because we're like the worst people to hold ourselves accountable.
This is true.
But tie accountability to it, because then you're looking at it regularly, and you should do this on a weekly basis. The reason we say 7 days is because if something isn't right, it's so much easier to course correct or pivot over 7 days than it is 14 or 30, right? That's why we don't do monthly accountability meetings. We do weekly accountability meetings. So tie accountability to it.
How do you think someone can find an accountability partner?
Oh my gosh, there's so many resources, right? I think first and foremost, just raise your hand and say, hey, look, I'm looking for accountability, because there will be so many people who are in the same boat. So whether it's accountability for tracking numbers, it's accountability for script practice, if that's what you do, like, it doesn't matter, raise your hand. And then when you get a partner, I feel like, for me, this is my humble opinion for myself, is that there has to be pain tied to it. I'm motivated by pain. And I know that sounds so silly, but the majority of us are. So my coach is $1,500 a month. So like if I'm not showing up and doing what I'm supposed to do, and I don't do my homework, and I'm not taking what we're talking about and then going back and implementing it and then showing up with whatever homework I needed to do the next week, it's like, we don't really have anything to talk about. And that's, I mean, that bill hurts me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
So for me, if I pay for accountability, it's much better. But you can get free accountability out there. Just make sure that whoever you're doing it with, the conversation is, we know we're going to talk this day at this time. Here's what we're going to talk about when we talk. And if somebody shows up for two-way accountability and somebody shows up and hasn't done what they were supposed to do, what is the consequence? We have to tie consequences to it. And they have to be things not like, I'll give $200 to the charity that I love so much. No, ma'am. That's something that you enjoy every single day to do. We want accountability, or we want repercussions, or we want consequences that actually hurt.
Yeah.
Right. I coach
some sort of exercise.
Yeah. No, I literally coached someone and he knew what he was supposed to do. And I said, here's the deal. You've been showing up to the last few calls and you haven't done what you're supposed to do. So we're going to put some pain in place because you're someone who's motivated by pain too. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I'll just give $500 to KW Cares. I was like, no, you won't, because that's what you love to do. And that's not pain. So I said, I want to know who your arch nemesis is. Like, it just kills you to even think about his name. So here, and he had an assistant at the time. I said, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to make out 5 checks for $500 each to that person. And they're already going to be in the envelope addressed, and we're going to tape them above your monitor. And every day when she checks your lead gen, if you haven't done it, no questions asked. She just pulls it off, licks it closed, and pops it in the mail. Do you know every single day he had his lead generation done? He could not fathom writing a check to his arch nemesis. So I'm talking about that kind of pain because he did it.
Love that. Number 5.
Yes. So number 5, I put what I call the 15th protocol, and I did not make that term up. I learned it a long time ago. And so there are going to be times where life happens. Things are not perfect, and we know that.
Right.
And so we've got to plan ahead. And so what's the contingency plan? So we build this beautiful goal sheet. We've already mapped out what our time off is going to be. We know how many hours we have in a day, and we've dialed it down to what we're supposed to do. And then the unexpected happens. And when it does, we can't just throw our hands up in the air and go, oh my gosh, we're behind now. Because that's probably what our first natural tendency is going to be to do. So what's the contingency plan? And the 15th protocol is a great example of this. So when you're evaluating this by the month. So if by the 15th of the month, you are not on track to meet your goal, you automatically kick the 15th protocol into gear. And the 15th protocol is a predetermined list of things that you are going to do in addition to what you already do for lead generation. So some of those examples might be like, do an extra open house over the weekend, add another 2 hours of lead generation, or 2 hours of lead generation in the week. Call an additional 15 contacts. So it's not in place of, it's in addition to, because we're behind and we need to kick something into gear.
I love it. So we have 5 great tips that Amanda gave us right now that you all can use, implement, and, really help you jumpstart your business planning and know where you want to go. Like you said, know where you want to go and make your blueprint for not just this quarter or next year, but throughout your business, which we all get busy. I respect that. But at the end of the day, you have to have systems in place, a business plan in place, and know what you're doing to get from point A to point B to point C, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a bonus tip that you have for us today, or a last thought about business planning?
Have fun.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who's doing it by yourself, find other people that maybe are in your brokerage that are all doing it alone, and get together and do a business planning night and have it all come together. And I say have fun because one of my favorite things to do in business planning is, I think because we're such visual people, we need to tie something visual to it. So I love the dream board or the vision boards. I love making those. So it doesn't matter what business planning I do, I always set an hour aside so that we can do some type of vision board. So have fun with it.
I love that.
Find people who want to do it with you. And do the vision board, because it's so cool to look back at the end of the year and go, yep, I checked that off. Yep, I did that. Yep, I did that. Like, it's the coolest thing in the world. So,
I need to do one again, because I would do them all the time, and I would hit those things that I really like wanted to hit, you know. Where can everyone find you? And, you know, and you now have a consulting company. So you are available to coach other agents and whatnot. So please share that.
Yeah, so my website is amandadahlconsulting.com. You can also reach me by email, and that's info@amandadahlconsulting.com. And I do one-on-one coaching. I'm working on a couple of training courses right now. I've got group coaching that I want to roll out in the spring. So there's a lot of good things coming. But yeah, whether you're someone who's just looking for one-on-one coaching, or maybe you just need a business planning session coming up for October, I also do those. So I'd love to help in any way that I can. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be great. And if you're listening on In the Hive, or you're watching this on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, feel free to drop some comments or reach out to like Amanda or myself, because she is a wealth of information. And just as a FYI, we met on Clubhouse, and that is a great space when you're in the right groups. So make sure you join us in Good Morning Real Estate, Good Evening Real Estate. I have Club Real, hashtag Realtor Life. So feel free to join there, and also follow both of us on Instagram. So, you know, this has just been great, very timely, and I appreciate your time today. So thanks for coming, Amanda Dahl.
Thank you for having me, Dahl.